everyone, welcome back to MalStorm Gaming. My name is Malachi Gardner, and today I'm going to be unboxing the Darklands expansion for Enchanters. I have done several videos covering Enchanters already, and as you all know, it is a game that I really like. There is a solo mode that is fairly fun to play, but I think it definitely does shine as a competitive game, but still does have a solo mode, so still is worth playing solo, I believe. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what all is in this expansion here. So as you can see, it's not a very big expansion, so should have a decent amount of stuff in it, but not too terribly much. And this, you do have the whole collector's box from their latest Kickstarter for Enchanters. The ultimate box there should still be able to fit all of these the content in this new expansion here, even if it is sleeved. Also, it's important to note that this is not a standalone expansion, so you do need to have one of the other core sets in order to be able to play it. So we have a rulebook here. Looks like got 11 pages long, including some kind of bios for the different factions. So looks like we have 197 poker cards, 12 oversized cards, and a token, and then 7 deck separators for use in the deluxe storage box. That's neat. Alrighty, so we actually, since we have 7 dividers, we actually have a lot more. And this is because the collector's box, the dividers were the wrong size, so they didn't work super well with sleeved cards. So everyone who bought this expansion here, or I don't know if it was just people who pre-ordered it, but there's the new dividers right here for anyone who needs them. So these should be a little bit taller than the ones in the last Kickstarter. So you can replace these, and it'll be a little bit easier to see the names of the cards, or of the different factions, even after you've sleeved your cards. So these are all the replacements here, and then the new ones here. Take a look at what we have here. So we have some frogs, ghosts, trolls, vampires, werewolves, witches, and woodfolk, which that is some interesting monster there. Alright, so a bunch of dividers there. We have this token denoting some sort of moon cycle there. I'm assuming with the werewolves have something to do with that. Then we have all of our cards here, as well as our oversized cards. Here, let's take a look at these first. So these will be your villages and overlords. Alright, so we have this little guy here. Vampire. Lots of different characters. So let's go ahead and read this one right here. So we have Yaba Bega, the Witch of the Lake. So she's got 6 health there and then 3 attack. And then if a monster escapes, then you will take 3 wounds or turn your top monster into a frog. And then if a dragon escapes when you rest, each player turns the top monster into a frog. So we'll have to see what frogs are. I'm assuming they're not very helpful. Maybe they don't give you any points or something like that. We'll have to see. And you can use a challenge action and pay 3 crystals to fight it. This character here, if you defeat it, as a reward, you get 3 points. And then whenever you place a monster, item, or enchantment on the graveyard, you heal 1 wound. So that's kind of cool. Then we have a bunch of the villages for each of the different factions. So that's cool. Let's go ahead and read with this one here. So multi-action, you can pay 2 crystals to get 1 attack. And then whenever you place a monster, item, or enchantment on the graveyard, you heal 1 hit point, or heal 1 wound, or take 2 and gems there, and then you can use a rest to take a frog. I don't know why you'd want to do that. And let's breed one other one right here. It's Fabulous Farmlands. Also has the same basic multi-action, and then when your turn begins, if you have the least gems, you take one, that's kind of a cool thing, just a mechanic there. And then you can use a rest to take 3 crystals, use a rest to heal 1, and then you could heal 1 extra if you have the most wounds. So I actually like this. This is kind of a, whoever is behind can use some of these rest actions and get some free resources and such. So to kind of keep the players together. So that's always nice, having some sort of catch-up mechanic in there. So we have these guys there, and then we have all these cards here. So won't look at all the cards, but we'll just get a feel for what these factions are capable of. So it looks like we do have some banners and classes. So hopefully we'll have one for each faction here. So we have the Ghost Banner, and it has an ability here that says you can place a item in the graveyard to heal yourself for 2. So that's nice. This Vampire Banner here, you can take 1 wound to get 2 defense. I like that. It's always kind of cool there. The Troll Banner, whenever you pass an equipment card on the journey track, you heal 1. Oh, that's interesting. Huh, and if you pass multiple equipment cards, then you could heal multiple times in the same turn even. That's pretty cool. When your turn begins, if you have the least defense, you gain 1. Alright. Werewolf Banner. When the game starts, flip the moon token, and you get +1 defense on a full moon, and when you take a monster, you flip the moon token. So we'll see what all the moon tokens do. The Amphibian Banner here for the witches, you start 2 frog cards, which are these right here, so we'll have to take a look at those next. Well, yeah, let's take a look at those before moving on to the classes. So, the frogs here, nice little back there. They have 1 hit point, 1 attack, and then you have a single point, but then you can remove this card from the game to take 1 crystal. So, there's some use to them, but overall they're not super useful in terms of points, but being able to just grab some crystals whenever you want is kind of nice. So they're not completely useful, or useless, I should say. Not completely useless, which I do appreciate. There's some use to them. Right. We have classes here of mediums, and you can place an item on the graveyard to take 4 gems. The Vampire Hunters, you can take 1 wound to get 1 attack. Of Smugglers, whenever you pass an enchantment on the journey track, you take 1 gem there. So these all pair very well with their corresponding races or banners. So that's pretty cool. Noblemen, when your turn begins, if you have the least attack, gain 1. Of Moon Watchers, when the game starts, flip the moon token, and you get +1 attack on a new moon. And when you take a monster, you can flip the moon token. Of Witches, whenever you place a monster, item, or enchantment on the graveyard, you take 1 gem. And yeah, so there's all sorts of things there. So, and like I said, they kind of pair up. So if we had Ghost Banner of Mediums, they both trigger off of placing cards inside the graveyard. So those wouldn't actually go too terribly well together, because since they both want you to do the same thing, they both want you to place items in the graveyard. So you might not be able to benefit from both of those super well together. But if you were to take, well, this one, actually, a Troll Banner of Smugglers would be a really interesting start, because whenever you pass a weapon and an item card, whenever you pass an item card, you heal 1. And then every time you pass an enchantment, you take 1 gem. So if you go really far in the journey track, you'll be able to get a lot of stuff there. So that's really cool. I feel these all seem pretty potent, very useful cards to have. So that's pretty cool. Some of the banners and classes feel a little bit, some of them feel more useful than others, but all of these seem to be pretty useful. I'd, gladly take any of these. So that's always very cool to have more of those. Getting in here, we have a bunch of frogs that all appear to be the same. We got 26 frogs here. Don't know why you need that many. They're all the same, but they do have slightly different flavor text here. So this one says, can you tell a bullfrog from a regular frog? It's impossible. Okay, that's not great. Jumping to conclusions, are we? My favorite flowers? Forget-me-nots? Okay, I'm gonna stop. So those are really bad puns, mostly, but they all do have slightly different flavor text, which is cool. But I don't know why you need 26 frogs. That seems like a lot. Then we actually have our actual factions here. So we have the ghosts. And so again, not going to read all of these, but we'll read a couple. So we have candles. Get 1 attack, but then permanently get 1 defense. So you can bury this card to ignore your weapon, but count your enchantment 1 more time. So you can kind of double up on your enchantment without, but foregoing your weapon card there. So that's kind of weird, but can be very useful and interesting in certain situations. The chain here, you can pay 3 gems and bury this card to swap your monster with a monster on the journey track. Ooh, that has a lot of uses. I really like that. The spirit board, you can use a rest and take 1 gem for each enchantment. So, etherealness, you can bury this card and have the hit points of target monster rounding up. So there's a lot of really interesting things here. A lot of it seems to have to do with burying your cards. So that is kind of an interesting strategy there. You can, of hunting, allows you to bury this card to ignore your, it's actually the same thing as the candle. So you can ignore your item and then count your enchantment 1 more time. Of conjuring, you can place an item on the graveyard to get 6 defense there. So that's really interesting. So this makes a lot of sense, thematically speaking, because, you're a ghost. Physical items aren't really going to be helping you too terribly much, and so really focusing on your enchantment thematically makes a lot of sense, because that's really going to be more useful to you. Poltergeist, 2-1, and when in combat with this monster, you ignore your weapons. Then it gives you 3 points. A whole bunch of those. Wow, there's a lot of these guys. Yeah, so that's cool. We have the White Ladies, and then Wraiths as well, and then the Randomizer card. So, that seems really cool. So let's move on to the next deck here. Very much looking forward to trying out these new factions. And yeah, hope to do a playthrough video soon. I do really like this game. It's a lot of fun. More, lighter drafting game, so that's really cool. I think a lot of these cards here in the Woodfolk Kingdom are going to continue on with the theme, actually it's right here, of having, if you have the least, if you're behind in something, then getting some sort of buff. So it says when your turn begins, if you have the least attack, you gain 3. So that's kind of cool. When your turn begins, if you have the fewest pairs of items and enchantments, you gain 2 attack and defense, and you also get 3 points there. So this is really interesting as well, having the least and then getting a buff for it. When you have the least, when your turn begins, if you have the least defense, you gain 3. Hospitality, when your turn begins, if you have the most wounds, you heal 1. So lots of different things here, having the fewest gems and then taking 2. If you have the most monsters, you can take 1. You take 1 wound. Oh, that's interesting. No, so it's of love, and so if you defeat a bunch of monsters, that's not going to help you very much. Huh, that's cool. This cockatrice here, this monster gets -2 if you have the least, -2 health if you have the least items. A bunch of those guys. Leshen. This monster gets -3 attack if you have the least enchantments. And a fiend and a wheat dragon. Now, actually, I just realized, was there a dragon for the ghosts? I don't remember seeing one. Oh, here it is, the ghost dragon. This dragon gets -1 health and -1 attack for each item. When in combat with this dragon, ignore all your items. So that's kind of interesting. He's really strong, 12 and 12, but you can't use any of your items, although each item does make him slightly weaker, so you still get some benefit from that. So that's kind of cool. And then back here, take a look at the wheat dragon. So he's a 7/7, so a little bit weaker there, but he counts as 2 items, 2 enchantments, and 2 monsters. So that's interesting because some factions that might actually be useful, but for this faction in particular, you know, you'll then have 2 additional items and enchantments and monsters, so you won't have the least for a lot of things. So that could be kind of damaging to you. But in other, you know, pairing this with another faction, that actually could be useful, because then you have, you know, 2 pairs, right? Since you have 2 items and 2 enchantments, that's 2 additional pairs of items and enchantments, which could really help you out. So that's really interesting there. Alright, next up we have, I'm not sure this, I think this is the trolls. Yeah, I think this is the trolls here. So we have potion, so it gives you 1 attack temporarily and then 1 defense permanently, and you can place this card in the graveyard to heal 5 wounds, so it's a one-time use thing there, but 5 wounds is pretty good. Hatchet, when you pass a monster on the journey track, take 1 gem. So I'm assuming they have a lot to do with healing and then you know, the journey track. So I'd be really interested to see a game with the trolls and the centaurs, since the centaurs are also heavily dealing with the journey track there. So that'd be kind of cool. So the map here, your journey costs are halved. Ooh, round up. This is really cool, because then you can just make it easier to, you know, go further on in the journey track, and therefore benefit from passing all sorts of different cards. So that's really cool. Of Water Walk. So temporarily you get 1 defense, and then permanently you get another defense. And whenever you pass an item or enchantment on the journey track, you take 1 gem. Of Confusion. So temporarily you get 1 attack and 2 defense, but permanently you get 1 attack. So overall, very good stats here. And then when you pass an item or enchantment on the journey track, you lose 1 gem. So that's not as good, but you know, a little bit not as beneficial of an ability there, but you have some really good stats, so that's nice. Of Life, when you pass a monster on the journey track, you heal 1 wound, and then you get a permanent defense there. Shiro's here, and he has 4 health and then 1 attack, so not super tough. And then whenever you pass this monster on the journey track, you take 1 gem. Ooh. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. So I imagine people would want to... see, there's a good bunch of them, but I'd imagine people wouldn't actually want to take them out. They just want to keep on passing them and then getting some extra gems. So essentially, you basically don't count his space when you're counting on the journey track, because you pass them, you just get 1. So that is interesting. Will-O-Wisp. Whenever you pass this monster on the journey track, you take 1 wound, and then you have a 2 health there and 5 attack. A Troll. When you pass this monster on the journey track, you lose 2 gems. And then he has a lot of health there with 7 health and then 3 attack. And then we have a Swamp Dragon with his 10 attack there, sorry, 10 health and 5 attack. And then you cannot pass this dragon on the journey track. You just, wow, that's pretty interesting. You just can't pass him at all. And then after you defeat him, you cannot pass a dragon on the journey track for the rest of the game. So you have to think about, is that worth it to have that disadvantage there? But overall, I really like the concept of the trolls as well. I will say, just looking through these cards very briefly, each of these factions, each of these kingdoms do something really interesting and very unique that's not, you know, done too much with the previous kingdoms there. So I am very pleased with these kingdoms so far, and I'm really excited to use them because they all seem very interesting. So we have one final pack here that'll open up because it's connected to this last stack of cards from that other pack. So the vampires, and the vampires, I'll have to say they're probably fairly high stakes playing them. I'm sorry about that, I really am. But for the stake card here, you can give, when you take it, you can give this item to target player, and that player takes 5 wounds, but then they get a permanent 1 extra damage there. So that's really interesting. You know, you're taking 5 wounds, which puts them down 5 points, but you are also giving them an extra attack for the rest of the game. So you have to worry about, you know, is that worth it? So then we have a cow here, and when in combat, you ignore your wounds. Okay. Huh, that's interesting. Not sure how useful that would be. So I'm sure there's maybe some ability that, I don't know, makes you weaker if the vampires can smell blood on you or something. So, or you do have those wound cards that you can play with, where if you have 10 wound tokens, you can replace it with a wound card, which has a nasty effect for the rest of the game. So maybe that would help you there, but I don't know, we'll continue reading on here. The coffin, when you take it, you heal 5 hit points, but you've got a -2 victory points there, so that's not great. So short term, you gain 5 points, but then long term, you're never going to be able to really get that back. So that's interesting. And then you do get 1 defense there, so that's cool. Of the bat, when you take this, each player takes 2 wounds, and you get 2 temporary attack and then 1 permanent defense. Of knight, so we have our 2 defense there, and then 2 temporary defense, and then 1 permanent attack. And when you take it, each player takes 2 wounds. Of thirst, 1 temporary defense there, and then 1 permanent attack. And then you can bury this card to take 2 gems for every 5 wounds target player has. He's +1 health for every 5 wounds you have, and then when you take him, each player takes 1 wound. Okay, so a bunch of bats there. Vampires, the namesake of this deck here. It's a 4/4 with 5 points, and he gets +1 health and attack for every 5 wounds you have. So the cowl really would be useful against these guys because you don't count the amount of wounds you have while you have the cowl there. Then we have Werebats and the Blood Dragon. He is 7/7 with 22 points, but when you take him, when you defeat him, you take 10 wounds. So yeah, you're getting 22 points, but you're also taking 10 wounds. So net result, you get 10 points. Although if you have ways of healing, then you could get a decent amount there. So it seems kind of cool. I will say, so far, just looking at it, haven't played with any of these, but looking at the factions, the vampires do seem the least interesting, because it's basically just giving everybody a bunch of wounds, and that's kind of already been done with the elves, the dark elves. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but the dark elf faction, it's already been out, and it does a very similar thing where people are just getting wounds. So not super interested in this one, unfortunately. I really like the concept of vampires, and I really like vampires in most games, but unfortunately these guys feel a little bit less interesting than the other characters or the other factions, but hey, maybe they'll actually be super fun to play with. But first impressions, not as interested in those. I will say, with these guys here, who is this? The werewolves. I really like this color. This is a really nice color here on the back there. I feel like it looks really cool. One of my favorite colors, I suppose. So that's really cool. But let's see what it actually does. So the torch here, you get +2 attack and +2 defense during a new moon. And we have this token here. One of these is a new moon, and one of them is a full moon. Not sure which one's which. I'm sure it says in here somewhere. Okay, so it looks like this is the full moon, and this is the new moon. So it's as expected. So during a new moon, so this is face up, you get +2 attack and +2 defense. So that's cool. And then you also just permanently get 1 defense there. A pistol, which is a interesting looking pistol there. And you get +2 attack and +2 defense during a full moon. And then you get 1 permanent attack there. So it's really the inverse of the torch here. Right, coins. You get 1 temporary attack and 1 permanent defense there, and a point, which is cool. And you can bury this card to take 2 gems and then flip the moon token. Lycanthropy. You get +4 attack during a full moon, and then 1 permanent defense there. Of the moon, you get 1 permanent attack and then 1 temporary defense, and a single point. And then you can bury this card to heal 1 health, and then flip the moon token. So a lot to do with that moon token, I'm sure. Silver gives you +4 defense during a new moon, and then 1 permanent attack. Angry Mob, it's a 2/2 for 3 points. And you can, after you take him, you flip the moon token, and he gets a +2/+2 during a new moon. Then Dire Wolves, he's a 3/3 and gives you 4 points. And then when he is revealed, you flip a moon token, and then he gets +3 attack and defense, or health rather, during a full moon. So, you know, all these cards really are just about that moon token here. So this guy, he gets +4/+4 during a full moon. And then you have the Moon Dragon, who's at 8/8 for 12 points. And then when this dragon is on the journey track, you ignore the moon token. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. That really seems to mess up a lot of the cards then. So that seems kind of cool. We'll have to see how those werewolves end up playing out with that moon token there. And then finally we have the witches here. And so the broom here gives you 1 temporary defense, 1 permanent attack, and you can place a monster on the graveyard to unbury one of your items, enchantments, or monsters. Mortar gives you 1 permanent defense, and then you can place a monster on the graveyard to heal 2 hit points or take 3 gems. Talisman, you can place it in a monster on the graveyard to get +5 attack, and then it gives you, or +5 defense, and then it gives you an attack there. Herbalism, whenever you place a monster item or enchantment on a graveyard, you heal 1 wound or take 2 gems, and then you get 1 permanent defense or attack there. Of the Frog gives you a defense, and then after defeating a monster, you take a frog and bury it. Alright, of Curses, you give this, when you take it, you give this enchantment to target player. That player turns the top monster into a frog, and then you get 1 temporary and 1 permanent defense. Familiar, 4 health there, 1 attack. When your turn begins, you take 1 gem. That's actually really cool. Want to keep him around, I'm sure. With quite a lot of those, so you'll be able to get a lot of stuff there. A lot of gems. And then Mandrake actually is very similar. When your turn begins, you heal 1 health. But then he has 2 health there, and then 5 attack there. So that's cool. I like the idea of monsters giving you buffs at the beginning of your turn. That's kind of cool. The Hag, it's an 8/2, and then when you take it, you turn your top monster into a frog, and target player turns their top monster into a frog as well. Okay. Cursed Dragon. Kind of looks really weird. He's 7/7 for 9 points, and when you take him, each player turns the top monster into a frog. And so that's kind of cool. Lots of frogs there, I guess. I don't know. I actually don't know if the frogs are able to be used in any other way, or if it's just brought on by the witches. There does seem to be a lot of them, so we'll have to see how that all works out. Yeah, the witches they seem interesting. I will say, first impressions, speaking wise, I think that these 3 are probably the most interesting to me. I think the ghosts might be the most interesting to me overall. I like the idea of, you know, really focusing on your enchantments, and then being able to bury your items to give you bonuses. That sounds really cool to me. And then I also like the catch mechanics with this, the Woodsman faction here. That sounds really cool as well. And then more stuff with the journey track also sounds really cool to Trolls. So I'm looking forward to playing with all of these. Yeah, I'll have to play with those and hopefully be able to do a playthrough on the channel and then do a review after playing with it a bunch to let you know what I think. But there is the last thing here, which is these cards here that you can use to turn the 6 overlords into the bosses for the cooperative game mode there. So that is there. If you do like playing this game cooperatively, you can with these cards to convert the monster by changing their abilities into a cooperative game mode there. So that's cool. So overall, looks really cool. I'm really excited to dive into this. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to MalStorm Gaming to see more content just like this. And until next time, happy gaming!